Just to speak, I have a number of amendments in this grouping as well, Minister, and some of the discussion we've had already. But I do believe, in relation to my amendment number 15, which is proposing that no fewer than 6 of the ordinary members of the board shall have experience and expertise in carrying out research. So we are seeking to specify a majority of the board, as a minimum, would be people who have expertise and experience in research. I think that's a very reasonable thing to demand. I point out that the European Research Council is absolutely wall-to-wall dominated by researchers, academics and so on. Every single discipline is represented, and there's no technocrats, for want of a better word, right? I don't mean that pejoratively, but they're all academic disciplines are represented. Geography, history, biochemistry, I see our own Luke O'Neill there, mathematics, physics, everything, linguistics, law, psychology, and so on. That's who runs the European Research Council. The only one that you've specified is enterprise. The only one. And I'd be interested to know why that's the only one that is specified. But that does ring alarm bells for me, because I do not believe that research should become the slave of profit-driven industry. And I have a deep concern that that's what can happen, and all too often does happen, because the people with the big money and the big resources, who governments decide are essential for the economy and so on and so forth, start dictating the type of research we have, what's considered important from a research point of view, and it becomes all about what is considered profitable in the short term. It becomes blue chip research instead of blue sky research. But the best of science, the best of research is where there's no restraints of that sort, and where people can delve into, the world we live in, and indeed dream about things that don't exist. And of course, in the end, if you don't have that approach, and this is why the other amendment is important that I've put forward in terms of the ensuring that there is a diverse expertise, a wide variety is the phrase I use, of academic disciplines and fields of research represented on the board. This is very, very important. Arts, for example, historically, just, the poor relation of research and third level funding and so on and so forth, because it's not considered to be as important economically. But you see, the thing about it is, if there weren't, people who wrote science fiction, we probably wouldn't have the mobile phone. It's the imagination, often, of artists imagining things that don't exist, but that could exist, that are then later developed and put into practice by the engineers and the mathematicians and the scientists and so on. But that artistic dimension, which isn't very narrowly sort of commercially focused or even necessarily solving what appears to be an immediately important problem, is critical actually for the development of human society. In fact, without language, take linguistics, without human communication, we wouldn't be, none of the industry and science we've developed would exist. So that temptation not to see some things as less important because they don't have an immediate economic return, or not seen to have an immediate economic return or benefit to the economy, is very, very short-sighted, and actually in the end it's a big mistake even from an economic point of view. The undervaluing of arts in this country, I think, is a massive economic mistake, although I hate to justify arts in terms of economy in any event, because it should be valued in and of itself, but actually our underinvestment in that area is a huge economic mistake. It's obviously has very serious economic and financial consequences for the many artists who live in poverty, but actually it's to the detriment of our economy. But like I say, I'm almost reluctant to say that because I don't think these things should be valued in narrowly economic terms. But what is critical is in funding research, there should be no hierarchy of what industry and the economy thinks is important dictating at the top, and then somewhere down the pecking order is, you know, the humanities or the arts or whatever, or blue sky research that doesn't seem immediately beneficial to some industrial enterprise or some industrial strategy. So that's the logic of the amendments I'm putting forward. I think not dissimilar to what Deputy Farrell is putting forward, and were probably discussed at a committee stage, and to repeat, are reflected in the makeup and structure of the European Research Council. So I'm not sure why you want to depart from that, and I think what we're proposing is better.
I no doubt you believe what you're proposing is better, but let me explain why I think what I'm proposing is better. So, look, the first thing I think is important to say, and I would hope that you'd accept this point. This is the first time in the history of the state that we are placing arts and humanities research on a statutory footing. So the IRC, which has done absolutely incredible work, doesn't exist in statute. There isn't a law, there's never been a vote in this House or the Seanad to set it up. It is effectively, and this is not to be pejorative to it, it's excellent, but it's effectively a sub-office of the HEA, and it could be ended with a ministerial letter today or by any minister in the future. There has never been a piece of primary legislation passed in relation to arts and humanities funding, and that's what we're doing here. And that's why I hope, while we'll debate and tease through the content of the legislation, as we should, I think, and not to speak for colleagues across the political divide, but I think that's instinctively why we haven't divided as a House at second stage or on a number of occasions of this, because we are trying to create one unified agency that recognises the benefit of all research. And for some of the reasons you've mentioned, Deputy, I mean, I'm an education and innovation minister. The research agency was fully based in the Department of Enterprise previously. It's now based in my department, recognising that, of course, there's an enterprise element to research and innovation, you know that too, but there's also an educational, there's a well-being, there's a societal impact, a societal benefit too. And that in and of itself is quite a shift. I do just need to say this though, whilst I'm not proposing to accept your amendments, I would really invite you or anybody else following this debate to look at the booklet that advertised the positions on the board. Because it says to be successful for a position on the board, you have to meet two of the criteria. You have to demonstrate evidence of significant experience in two or more of the following areas. There's 9 areas, every single area, I have them here, I've highlighted them, I've underlined them. Every single area here mentions research or researcher. There is 11 references to the word research or researcher in the 9 criteria. You cannot be successful through the PAS process to end up on the board of this agency without meeting 2 of those criteria. So we can have a difference of view on how we do this and how we word legislation, and that's our job as legislators. But I wouldn't like to be in any way, shape or form misrepresented as not believing that experience in research or being a researcher matters in terms of the competency of the board, because it does. It is correct that there is 1 seat on the board that is appointed by the Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, and I think that's for good reason. In relation to the work traditionally that SFI have done, there are linkages with IDA Ireland, Enterprise Ireland, but there's 10 seats on the board that are filled by me, an Education and Innovation Minister, with those 9 criteria, 11 references to research and researcher. So I do just want to make that point. So this is the first time ever in Ireland we're passing legislation that actually brings about that parity of esteem in terms of arts, humanities, and let's say the traditional enterprise view of science and research. And that's not, I think, an insignificant moment. To Deputy Farrell, and I thank her for her engagement with me on this at committee stage, and we had a lengthy enough back and forth in relation to this. And look, my view ultimately remains the same. I agree with you that it's important when there's a new agency established that we very much monitor as an Oireachtas, at Oireachtas committees, at government level and in this chamber, as to how that agency is functioning, and to make sure that it fulfills on what we all want, which is that parity of esteem. I agree with that. what I don't propose to do is put it in primary legislation, that we would review it within a year, because I think there's other elements in this legislation that will enable it to be subject to ongoing review, including the chief executive of the agency coming before the committee, as an example, and obviously it's open to any member of the Oireachtas to seek to amend legislation at any stage as well. I also think if I put in the law that we'd review the composition of the board effectively within a year, having hopefully appointed a board for 4 years, I think that could create a degree of accidental instability. But it's not that I'm against the idea of keeping this under review, it's more just that I don't want to be prescriptive in relation to that in legislation.
Minister, you say that the requirements are that people will have to most likely have experience in research. But the diversity which is critical is not written in. And it is noteworthy that the one that you've specified is enterprise. Why, for example, would you not have specified arts? Why not? Right? Enterprise is specified, and it is because there is a prioritisation of what is considered to be important for the economy. Now, I think that's a mistake. And by the way, that sort of mistake leads in all sorts of terrible directions. I mean, I could cite the RTE toy show example. Somebody thought we'll cash in on the toy show, the Christmas toy show, to make money, right? But it really had nothing to do with, art, and then it didn't make money. And it was a total disaster, a fiasco. So you need to have that diversity of opinion and perspective in order to make all the things work. I mean, I hate to use a phrase like dialectics, but I do actually very committed to dialectics and the interconnectedness of things. And the truth is, art needs science, and you need to have that balance and that diversity in all the different disciplines. And I think that should be hardwired into it. And I think it's a reasonable proposal. And I hope, although you're not going to accept it, that will actually inform the makeup of this board. I worry it's at the whim of ministers. You may be a good minister in this regard. I hope you will be, but others may not. So I think it's the right thing to hardwire it into it, to have that diversity of disciplines in terms of the board, and that's why we're putting this forward.